My name is Alan Broadhurst, and I'm very familiar with Community Paint and Hardware Store in Bethesda because my family owned it and operated it. I am 93 years of age now, and I remember much of what went on there. Having grown up in Bethesda, I graduated in 1950 from Bethesda Chevy Chase High School, and am very aware of how the town was back in those days. Everything here is new. When I grew up in Alta Vista Road, Wisconsin Avenue was just a straight road with nowhere near as many of the side roads. I remember Battery Lane, I remember Wisconsin Avenue, Old Georgetown Road. Bethesda at that time had one theater. It was the Heiser Theater, and under the Heiser Theater was a bowling alley, which all of my family enjoyed. There was another theater built later, which was the Bethesda Theater, and the Bethesda Theater had to the right of it Gifford's Ice Cream, which was a very popular hangout for the high school students. Also, People's Drugstore was a very popular hangout. I remember the soda fountain at People's Drugstore, which was a very popular place to go. On the corner of East-West Highway and Wisconsin was Howard Johnson's Hot Shop, which was also a place that the kids loved to go after a movie or on a date. And it was a place where you could, somewhat like a fast food restaurant. So a lot of memories. Community Paint and Hardware Store was a family store that I was very much involved in as I grew up. As I remember it, the store was built in 1880 by Alfred Wilson. So the store later, around 1920, was sold by Wilson to George Bradley. Bradley ran the store until 1931, when two of my uncles bought the store. They had started working in the store when Ralph was about 13 years old and Henry was 17. And they worked about 10 years and then bought it. James Broadhurst had 8 children, 7 boys and 1 girl. My dad was the oldest, and when he quit school, he went to work for Western Union, and he worked for Western Union for 31 years. Henry and Ralph were, as I said, 13 and 17, and they went to work for Alfred Wilson. And they never left the store. They stayed forever until they retired. And they all had a particular talent that they developed in the store. Henry did the books. Ralph knew everything there was about hardware, pipes, tools, nuts and bolts. My dad, who had learned a great deal about electricity at Western Union, became the electricity expert in the store. If anybody had a problem, he could either answer it or solve it with what they had at the store. Alfred became the paint specialist. Anything you had about paint, he would help you out. And Harold was kind of an all-around mechanic and builder. He would build things for customers. He'd even go to a customer's house and maybe build a cabinet for him in the kitchen or something. Harold also ran the lawnmower repair business. And the store was the main stop from Washington on the stage run. So at the time, a lot of the roads around here were dirt roads, and still stages and horses is what they used. But it had in one corner of the store a post office. It had a telephone, which was the only telephone in the area. If somebody wanted to reach a town member, they would call the store, and the store would, the next time they saw the person, say, hey, somebody's trying to get in touch with you. The store had at the time 2 long rows. On one row was dry goods and also vegetables, not greens, because most people grew their own greens at the time. And the other row had hardware items. In the back of the store, a back entrance was where you would go for fuel, for kerosene, for wood, and for feed, chicken feed, rabbit pellets, and things of that nature. I worked there from when I helped there from when I was 12 years of age to I think 19 and 20. I was going to college at the time, and I needed something to make some money in the summer. At that time, in any store locally, you didn't have things pre-bottled and prepared. There was nothing in cellophane or packages. So if you wanted turpentine, which then was called mineral spirits. If you wanted Varsol, which was a cleaning fluid. If you wanted kerosene. If you wanted denatured alcohol. If you wanted linseed oil. I had to go down the basement, and we had 50-gallon drums of these items. And either you brought with you your jar to put things in, or we saved jars whenever we could find them. And so I would pump in the denatured alcohol, if that was it, put it in the jar, and then we had a community paint and hardware label that we put on it. And I would make sure the label said exactly what was in there. And that's the way we would sell it. We also had in the basement 100-pound bags of millet, chick feed, Milo maize, peanut hearts, sunflower, and I would make up 10 or 20-pound bags of birdseed. All of that was mixed, 1 scoop of this, 2 scoops of that, etc. So I would prepare birdseed. We also had hardware store bins for nails. Nails, I would take kegs of nails up and dump them in the bins. So my job was to make sure all of those bins were filled. And I would bring, at the time, I could bring, believe it or not, I could put a 100-pound bag of rabbit pellets or chick feed on my shoulder, carry it up the steps, and dump it into those bins. I probably couldn't pick up 20 pounds today, but so that occupied a lot of time. And as I stayed more and more in the store, I was sharpening tools, skates. I used to cut and thread pipe. For example, I remember making for Landon School. I remember making a huge swing in the back playground area for them. And so I would cut maybe a 20-foot piece of 1.5 or 2-inch pipe, thread it, and put it all together. So as I got to stay there, I got more and more adept at what I was doing. So one summer, for example, I ran the lawnmower repair shop. We had in the basement a lawnmower repair shop that we usually had 25 to 50 lawnmowers there. At that time, everything was reel type lawn. We had a machine that would sharpen reel push lawnmowers, where you would take it all apart and just take the cutting blades, put them into the machine, and you had to know what you were doing. And we knew it was sharp when we could take a newspaper and just touch it on the edges and it would cut the newspaper clearly. Anyway, there was that. There was repairing Briggs & Stratton motors. I could, at that point, pretty good at listening to a Briggs & Stratton motor and telling what the problem was. Things were easier back in those days. Then rotary mowers came in, but they were not as prevalent at that time. So there were a lot of people came in. I used to wait on Eric Severide, which was a newscaster well known at the time. I used to wait on Roger Mudd. I used to wait on Shirley Temple. I delivered food to her home in Potomac, Maryland. Her name at the time was Shirley Temple Black. I waited on Robert Packwood, who was senator from Oregon. Also, both Huntley and Brinkley, David Brinkley especially, who were well-known newscasters. When Henry bought the store, from the very beginning, they were very much customer-oriented. They knew your name, they knew your children's name, they knew your grandchildren's name as 50 years or more, 55 years of the store developed. And if you came in, they called you by name. They never had to advertise. I was told they advertised once in the Bethesda Chevy Chase High School yearbook, and it brought in so many customers they were overwhelmed. So the store had up to, at one time, 16 different Broadhursts working in there in various capacities. The wives, I'm counting the wives, my mother and Henry's wife, both assisted at the bookkeeping at the end of the month. When everything was done by hand, there was no automated anything. As a matter of fact, I remember Harold, one time we were cutting glass at the glass table, and Harold was waiting on a customer, and the customer said, "I'd like to make an account here," create an account. And Harold had a paper bag there, and he pulled it out, put down your name and your address, and wrote it down. And a minute later, the customer said, "Well, what can I do to have an account in the store?" And Harold said, "You have, you just did." And that's the way. There was no investigation into your credit or anything. I'm sure they were taken advantage of at times, but I'm also sure that their reputation increased because of that. When they closed the store in 1985, my dad had already retired. He was 85. He retired a year or two before that. All of the members in the store were retirement age, and they were offered Henry and Ralph owned the store, so they were the key people to make decisions about the store. They were offered up to $8 million for the property in the store. Henry had not only owned the store, but he bought a couple properties next door to it. Gretchen Coles, for example, was one of the stores. And of course that was when they were building high rises, and that's what they wanted. And so they figured just because of the times and because of the age, they were ready to close. So they sold the store, and when that became known, David Brinkley got his office staff, and Robert Packwood got his office staff, and they put on a party, a going-away party for the store, and they invited all the customers in. So it was a party that took place. The newspapers all recorded it. The major TV stations in Washington recorded it, and it was just a wonderful affair where everybody was sorry to see it go, and yet it was time.